Thank you. And thank you all. We'll see you next week. Good morning. I'm Lawrence Geller, the founder of For Advisors Only, foradvisorsonly.com. Welcome to the Meet the Masters of Insurance webinar series. This is the 8th of what we expect to be a great many webinars with Canadians who have dedicated their careers to learning the art and science of insurance sales and service. Webinars in this series are now scheduled through the end of this year, and more are being added to the schedule daily. Over the years, I've observed that every successful insurance agent who I've met has succeeded differently, even if they're in the same field, deal with similar clients, and even if they are related or in business together. That's what makes the sale and servicing of insurance one of the best careers that I can imagine. It's possible to become a success, It's possible to become a success in our business with diligence, integrity, and experience. With this webinar series, we intend to prove that any type of person can succeed with time and hard, thoughtful work. Our goal is to create a video record for each of these masters of insurance so that some of their expertise and experience will be available to anyone who'd like to learn from them in the future. Today, we have Terry Zavitz with us. Paul Bourbonniere will be interviewing Terry. Terry started in the insurance business as a specialist in disability insurance for professionals and self-employed business owners. Since that time, her practice has expanded to include critical illness, long-term care, life, medical and group insurance, and retirement financial planning, with a focus on protecting the financial well-being of her clients in the event of an accident, sickness, or death. Terry takes pride in providing appropriate, sound advice, engaging in regular reviews, and providing support at the time of a claim. In order to fully understand the needs of her clients and to ensure that the risk management solutions that Terry presents are appropriate, she works with other advisors the client may have, such as their lawyer, accountant, or investment broker. Proper analysis of the needs is done through communication with the client, their advisors, and financial outlines done by Zavitz Insurance, in-house financial planner. Zavitz Insurance is insurance licensed in 9 provinces, which allows them to continue to service their clients outside of Ontario. Terry values the support of insurance carriers and works to maintain strong relationships with them. Most of all, Terry values the team that works at Zavitz Insurance Wealth, a hub insurance company, all of whom work hard to enhance the client experience and constantly upgrade their knowledge so that they can provide up-to-date and sound advice in an easy-to-understand manner. The Zavitz Insurance motto sums up their focus: partners in practice, business and life, with you every step of the way. We're now booking webinar interviews through the end of 2024. And as I said earlier, new dates are being added daily. I'd like to introduce you to Terry Zavitz, interviewed by Paul Bourbonniere.
Thank you, Lawrence. And before we begin, I'd like to actually thank you, Lawrence, for this incredible project. This is a time capsule and also a learning resource. I think this is something that all existing and future advisors will be well to learn from and to be inspired by. And so to that extent, Terry, I'd like to thank you for your contribution to this as well, because for some reason, the word pioneer, trailblazer so applies to you and your practice. And hopefully today we can explore some of that. There's so many dimensions to you and your practice, your business strategy, and to the world at large, and actually the social service that we provide in our work. So we'll begin. It'll be a conversation. We'll kind of go back and forth, and probably a little bit of revisiting topics as we go through this next hour. There's so much to talk about, and we certainly once again thank everybody involved for their participation. So Terry, let's go back to the very beginning. So you're a teenager and probably not even thinking about careers. Anything about your family life, personal life as a young person that in many ways, in retrospect, prepared you for the life as an entrepreneur. How did it all begin?
Well, before I begin, again, I want to express my thanks to Lawrence. I think you mentioned the world trailblazer, and I think that's what Lawrence has been in our industry, whether it is allowing us to communicate through FAO or this kind of venue, that these things are unique and allowed us to learn from each other. And even though we may be in the business for a long period of time, doesn't mean that we don't wake up every day and say, okay, what do I need to learn today so that I can be better tomorrow? And I know that you do that, Paul, and I know Lawrence does that, and just Lawrence provided the vehicle. So thank you, Lawrence. And thank you, Paul, for being part of this whole adventure today, because you make it so easy, and I appreciate that. So going back to the beginning, yeah, I never planned on being an insurance advisor. That thought never dawned on me at all. I graduated in music and was teaching music. And my husband and I owned a music studio, and we had a 7% demand loan for $100,000 that we used to purchase this music studio. That was back in 1978. And everybody knows what happened to the interest rates in the early 80s. They went up, and of course we were at 22%. There was a good recession going on, and we already had 2 kids by that point in time. And I just thought, we're gonna be bankrupt really soon, and we're gonna be on welfare. And so I said, Doug, you just keep this company going and see if you can sell it at some point in time. I'm gonna try and do something else. And so with that, I went out and I answered a newspaper ad, and it was for Paul Revere Insurance. And Paul Revere Insurance was a specialty company in the field of disability insurance. It's had many names: Paul Revere, Provident, Unum, RBC now. But that's where I actually started. And they didn't hire women. And the reason that they didn't hire women at the time was that they felt that the sales VP felt that women were mothers first, wives second, and then salespeople third, and he didn't like that order. So he didn't hire them. But when I went in for the interview, I was immediately hired. And the reason is that I knew about disability insurance, I loved it, and I could see the need. And the reason was, my father was a psychiatrist, and he had an aneurysm at the age of 51 that left him aphasic. And then after that, he had a pulmonary embolism that put him into the intensive care, critical care unit. And he was there for about 3 months before he was actually able to come out. And he lived for another 20 years. But during that time that he was in the intensive care ward, I would go to Sunnybrook Hospital. I'd be put into a little room, and I would wait for the nurse to call me to say that I could go in and see him. And he was on life support for sure for many, many months. Anyways, I'm in that room, and then you get to see and meet the families of other patients that are in that critical care unit. And some of them, they just had to deal with the stress of having a loved one in that critical care unit and nothing else. There were too many others, though, that had to deal with how they were going to afford next month's rent or mortgage payment, how they were going to afford the bus to get there. And I really remember the most frightening case, and that was of a young family. The wife had just given birth 6 weeks prior to their second child. The oldest one was like 3 years old, and the husband was a quadriplegic. In fact, he couldn't even breathe on his own after jumping off or diving off of a cliff into the water and then breaking his neck. And they had nothing. They had nothing. And she didn't know where she was going to go. And I just thought, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So it instilled with me the need for disability insurance, why we needed it, what happens to people when you're not properly insured. And I got to witness it. And I don't think it's changed today than it did back in the early 80s when I had to face this dilemma. Long answer, Paul, but it got me into the insurance business where I've loved it right from the very first day.
Well, but once again, as a pioneer, so you're a woman in a male business. It sounds so archaic today, but it was the reality in the 70s, and I think it's a testament to your belief in the product and just kind of guts to say these barriers are artificial and they're ridiculous and away you go. And I think that's even today, I'm sure there are barriers that advisors face and we just have to learn to deal with them. But I think, just in context to understand just how uh, other people would say, well, then I guess I'll go sell furniture or something else. So you rather than sort of, were you always the entrepreneur who happened to choose disability coverage, or were you somebody who was impassioned by the value of the coverage and then built a corporate structure around it? I mean, just from a positioning, a business positioning.
Well, it was the latter. I never planned on developing a business at all. I just saw a need for disability insurance, and the fact that, my role would be to talk to people, which I love to do, and then espouse the need for disability insurance and make sure people were properly covered. That was a fantastic role to play. And I knew that when I had reached out to my husband when my dad got sick, I said, Doug, we've got to get disability insurance. And I was so confused by the number of advisors that had come by to see us and all the complexity of disability insurance. And I thought, wow, I can simplify this. I know I can do this. And I know that I can really do some good for a lot of people to make sure that they were properly covered. The rest after it, I had no plans to build a business. I just cared about what was going to happen to people. And luckily, I was introduced to strategic coach at a very early time in my career. And it was through there that I realized that you could expand into a business and do a whole lot more than just be yourself trying to do everything. And so that really worked for me. But even to this day, I still don't keep a budget. I would not call myself a great business person because I'm not. And I've just been very lucky to be able to grow something that I never ever thought possible.
Well, and of course, there's this recent transaction, if you will, a transformation of with the hub group, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, because not that that's a culmination, but it's interesting from a career path or a business planning path that a lot of advisors today are concerned about the next generation, how to continue the business, how to provide growth. It's not like we can all get listed on an exchange and raise capital and become multinational. So it's going to be interesting to explore that in a moment. As you began, so you're in an office, presumably by yourself. You're understanding, I'm sure, that as business gets busy, you have to bring on help and associates, and your staffing grows. What were those early days? And did you have a mentor? Was there somebody out there that also was into living benefits who you said, you know what, I've got to get to know this person, or I'm following this person? How did you learn the business?
Oh, I think it's luck more than anything else. Um, yeah, there was a lot of things that were said. I was young with two kids and a female and a male world for sure. And there were a lot of comments made like, I don't know any woman that's ever made it in this business. And the fact that you have children means that, it's unlikely you will make it. And I actually had my third child 5 years in, and at a conference, that after I think I just had the baby 3 months ago, and I'd come third in the company, even though had a maternity leave of about 8 weeks. But anyways, had a maternity leave, and the one fellow, he turned to me and he said, geez, you look good. You still look so frumpy. What is it? Have you lost weight? And I can go back to so many stories of the things that people have said to me during the years, especially in the 80s and so on. But I looked at it and I actually thought that nobody meant any malice by it. I think that they were saying all of it in a very caring way, and I could choose to accept it um, on terms that would be negative, or I could just, think, okay, you're just warning me. You're just, telling me what you think is going to be my problem moving forward so that I can be aware of it and so on. Anyways, whether they were thinking that way or not, didn't matter. That's the way I looked at it. And
No.
a lot of people that had said something to me that I went, oh, that's really inappropriate. Over the years, I came to realize just how great they were, and they really were very caring people. So I think we've got, new lenses as to how to speak to people, whether it's women or people of color or whatever it is. We have new lenses as to what to say and how to say it, and that's really great. But it's also the recipient can choose to choose to accept things that are said in a light that maybe is more positive and maybe more of what the person was really meaning when they talk to you. So yeah, it was a challenge, but I never felt that it was any more of a challenge for me than it was for anybody that comes into this business. It's tough for everybody.
Okay. So let's fast forward to today, and you're talking to your younger self, and you look at today's world and today's opportunities. How you started versus how you might suggest someone starting today. Uh, Someone who has the equal passion with living benefits, understands the need, and is looking at the world of 2024. What would your advice be to that advisor, and how have things changed, and what would you do more of, or what's different about today?
Well, I guess I would really look at three things, Paul. First of all, the first thing is get a coach. I can't begin to tell you how important coaches are. I've had different coaches at different times. I've gone back to the same coach and so on, just depending on the situation. I would say to myself, pay more attention to those coaches, engage them even more than you did, have more of them. And of course, don't even think of the cost of a coach, because a good coach is priceless.
Mhm.
And and they will cause you to think about your business and allow you to be, just better at what you do. The second thing that I would say to anybody is chart your own course, and not to be, or I would say to myself, just keep on going, chart your own course, but take risks along the way. I was very careful about what I did. I wish I had bought more businesses. I wish that I had brought maybe more, like spent more money on getting really good people into the office at an earlier time. I have excellent staff right now, but it took me a long time to figure out the value of having excellent people supporting you. And the third thing that I would say is um, if you're good at what you do as an advisor, do that and hire everything else out. And and if you're not good at that, well then be the manager and hire the good advisors. Just know
Right.
where you're really good at and focus in on that. And but I know that I tried to do too much myself all the way through. And so that was
So
that's
you've
making
built
it difficult.
a team of everyone has their own unique ability, and yours as an advisor. So what does the office look like? What does the company look like today from a team member point of view? I mean, how many people have you got? You started with one person yourself, and now what do you
Well,
look
we have
like?
16 people in the office.
Wow.
But, it's not huge or anything like that. But boy, some days I think I could use 20. And everybody works hard because we have a lot of clients and we want to be there for them. I always say if I really wanted to make money, I should just go and work out of my basement because, with all the renewals and everything else, I could just go in my basement, not pay anybody, and, just kind of languish there. But that's not what my vision was. It was not the vision of the team that's at the office. It's more about care for clients, whether it is as simple as an address change or as complicated as a claim. And and we needed 16 people in order to do that. That's just the way it worked for us.
Mhm.
But again, as we grow, which is still the focus point, we'll need more.
So speaking of growth, I mean, you've grown in so many dimensions in number of people, you've grown in geography, you've grown in the services that you offer. So let's take a look at those particular dimensions, and starting with the number of folks, and you've touched on that. Just you've got great people, and the work is there to keep everybody busy, and so you're growing. But your people also include family members. So can you tell a little bit about bringing family members into the business?
Yeah, well, that was never planned on either, and it's actually a scary proposition. It's the scariest proposition. I'll say that to anybody. So my daughter Justine came into the business. This is her 19th year, and it was all circumstantial. She never thought she'd come into the business. She had graduated from McMaster, was going to China to teach English as a second language. Her friend dropped out. Um, at the time, she was just passing time until she went to China in the fall, and was working as the receptionist at the office in the daytime, and then working at a bar at night, and trying to make money. Anyways, when her friend backed out, she didn't know if she was going to handle the business or not, or come into, or I'm sorry, she didn't know what she was going to do. She never thought about the business. And it was the manager at the bar that said to her one night, "Why don't you get into the insurance business your mother has? Because it's a success and you should go in there." And so she came to me the next day and she said, "I'd like to try the business." Well, she had a BCom, and I said, that's not enough, to do anything in this business. You're going to have to go back and get extra training. And Fanshawe College took her in, and she got her financial services diploma from Fanshawe College, which really is taking a BCom and giving the courses that you need for to be a financial planner. So I was petrified to have her in the office. I mean, she was just coming out of teenagehood, and she wasn't the easiest one to raise during that time. And she thought I was stupid and and everything else. So I didn't really know if I wanted her in the business either. But luckily, she came in, and it worked, and we actually gelled right from the very beginning. So then, when my youngest son, um, who had graduated kinesiology and then went back and did a post grad in business, I went to him and I said, "I think you should get your CFP. I think you should look at some of this stuff and see where you go." And he did that, and he ended up getting a job with a major brokerage company and got experience there. And then I knew he'd probably come into the business. And when I asked him, if he wanted to consider coming into the family business, I was actually afraid again. I thought, "Oh my goodness, are we going to make like family dinners to be very uncomfortable because of working together?" But I've been very lucky. That has not happened. I can assure you that has not happened. And, it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Interesting. So another dimension of expansion and growth was, the various products. I mean, from living benefits, now you do, some group and life and what. So explain kind of how that evolved.
You got to do what you think you feel well, what you know you're good at, what you really enjoy. And I was going to go the typical route where I would get into wealth planning. And when I started doing investments, because I did start that, I mean, way, way, way back, I realized it wasn't for me. That's not what I wanted to focus on. But what I really liked was the planning around it, the financial planning, the retirement planning, and so on. I didn't like the investments. And as I looked around, I saw great people like yourself, Paul, that do awesome jobs with investments. And I thought, what do I want to compete against them for? They're really good at what they do. So I basically just did what I really liked doing and started doing the planning and so on. And out of that came so much life insurance. And then people would ask me about the group, and I'm thinking, I really like this group. I can see myself doing it. And so it was about 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, we got into the group market, and I've really enjoyed it. I loved the group, and I don't know why I do, but I just do. And it just allowed us to expand the practice, and probably the team at the office, because I needed people that just focused on group in the office, as well as people that focused on the individual side and the retirement and financial planning. Because for a team member, it's really difficult for them to cross those lines, to do all the administration, to do that. But I just did what I liked.
So did you, the capabilities start and then you hired to that, or it became an organic outreach and then you added team members to service that need?
Well,
How did it evolve?
a little bit of both. Okay, so mostly I liked it, and then you add team members. But one of the really important points to know with regards to having a business is that you have to also have the foresight to realize when you need new team members. So if I remember correctly, I remember going into the group, but it didn't take me very long to say, I don't know how I'm going to keep this person busy, but I better hire somebody. And went out and hired my first person, who is still with me, by the way. She's been there for a long time. Um, hired my first person, and she came with so much experience and so on that really helped. But at the beginning, I really wondered what I was going to do with her and how I would keep her busy. But it grows. It grows if you get the right help.
And then you expanded geographically. You're across the country now, or virtually. So once again, did that evolve, or did that was part of the structure and you backfilled as you went? How did you become a national firm?
Well, it was more like our clients moved. So I started out, I don't do this anymore, but I started out by doing seminars at the medical and dental school. And so as these students graduated and went into practice, a lot of them would move home, or decide that they'd want to move out west because they want to be in the mountains or this sort of thing. And I realized that I needed to get myself licensed in different provinces to properly, well, I needed to get licensed in order to handle them. And you work so hard for a client, I didn't want to let it go. So as time went on, you just add province, depending on where they went to. And next thing you know, we're licensed in all provinces but Quebec. And we maintain those licenses. I found them very useful, and it's the only way that you can work with clients. And it's interesting, our clients didn't care that we were back in London if they had moved to Alberta or Saskatchewan. They didn't care. All they cared about was that we did the reviews with them all the time. I should have taken note of that, because I think COVID was the impetus to make sure that we could do so much on Zoom and didn't need to be in the office all the time and so on. But I didn't. I didn't take that. I didn't see that. And I should have, because these clients didn't care. They never have cared. And I know Lawrence, he'd say, like, you can work out of your house. Like, you don't need to have an office. You don't need any of that stuff. And he was right. He was way ahead of his time.
Yeah. Well, working from home has certainly become, or from anywhere, although you have to be careful about borders and regulations and what have you. But nevertheless, distance has disappeared is kind of the phrase in our firm that we use. So all of a sudden, family meetings that are literally for across country, around the world can happen. Whereas before, you'd have to wait till they're all in town for a family event, and then you try to catch as many of them as you could. And now it's so easy. And you also probably were growth oriented from the beginning, because starting in a city like London, which is a decent sized town, but you're so close to so many other major centers that you must have spilled over quite early in your career into other Ontario towns and cities, being near Toronto and the like.
Yeah, you do. Just naturally, you do that. Sometimes I find competition in the big cities, that you would end up getting people saying, well, like, I want a Toronto advisor. It seems like the closer they are to you, the more that they would be, like, the closer they are geographically, the more that I would get, well, maybe I should have an advisor, in Toronto or something. So I found that tougher than, okay, I'm moving to Vancouver, and I'll say, hey, I can service you out in Vancouver. Oh, that's really great.
Yeah.
Where I go to Toronto or Waterloo, maybe I should get an advisor there. I'm going, what? I can see you.
The
So
advantage we
that,
have over being a dentist, you know, dentist, it's still hands-on, but
yeah,
in financial services, you know, especially living benefits, but in insurance generally, they always say that you really aren't in the business until you delivered your first claim check.
yeah,
You've had probably, as a percentage of your client base, just by virtue of the coverage you sell, more claims than a lot of advisors.
yeah.
Any, I mean, there must be literally hundreds, but are there some that almost changed your thinking about the business or changed the reason why you were in the business that really kind of turned your, not turned your head around, because you had a great focus from the beginning with your personal situation, but are there any that you just sort of, I don't care what I have to do, I've got to keep doing this. This is so important. Could you
Mhm.
share some of those?
Yeah, you're right, Paul. I've had hundreds and hundreds of claims that we've handled. I will start out by saying that there is misinformation in the insurance world as to insurance companies and whether they're out to get out of paying claims and all that sort of stuff. It's not true. I would say that in 41 years, maybe I've had 3 or 4 claims that I've really questioned the insurance company on. In the end, there has been many, many claims where I've questioned the insurance company and then worked with them in order to get things right. But just to tell the audience here the importance of the insurance company, and for the most part, if you treat your claims examiner with respect and work through the issues that do come up, because they do come up, at the end of the day, the right things do happen, and it's very rare you have to go any further than that. So with that though, what were some of the claims that were um, well, jaw-dropping? I would say that, you know, as recently as this week, I received an email from a claimant who had been denied the short-term disability. I had met with her and just wrote a letter on her behalf based on the details that she gave me. And I wrote a letter. It took me all of about 20 minutes. And I wrote it to the claims examiner. I said, I'm just not convinced that you're seeing the big picture here. Here's what's happening. And this is why this person deserves to be considered for disability benefits. And she wrote today and she said, thanks, I now have disability benefits. It wasn't any kind of newer information that the claims examiner didn't have. It's just that I put the context around it. They didn't realize that this person was doing, like, she had to walk like about 25,000 steps a day in her job. She was not sitting at a desk, and nor could she. She had a job that she had to move around, and the adjudicator didn't understand that. So that was a simple thing. But then I get very um, exceptional ones. So I can remember there was one client who left me and just said, you know, I want to keep everything under one roof, went to the investment advisor, and then changed agent of record on disability coverage that I had put into place. And I mean, that's always hard for any advisor, but clients do what they do for all their own reasons. Anyways, this one person became disabled, and the investment advisor sent them the claim form, and they just didn't even know what to do on that. And they called me up and they said, would you help me? And I was glad to help them. They're good people, and it was very unfortunate there was that claim situation. Well, when I got looking at what was happening, I realized that the investment advisor was probably a very good investment advisor, but knew nothing about disability insurance. He just, you know, wanted to circle the client, but he didn't know what he was doing. And this person, this client, had an option to increase his amount of insurance that was up at that time. And the need that we were like 2 days before the option was about to expire. And, you know, I said, you know, you can exercise this option and you can receive this on claim with this policy that you got. And so we were able to increase his benefit by $1,500 because he was underinsured, because the investment advisor didn't know that you got to look at your disability insurance every year. So I was able to increase the amount of coverage and then able to get this person on claim. This person never was totally disabled first. It was a complicated residual claim to begin with. And I was able to work, through that with them. And it was satisfying because, there was obviously a lot of thanks that comes from the client and, just said, like, I thought it was going to be much better to be under one roof. And it wasn't when he really needed the help. But the point is that, they've done so much for me ever since that happened. This person's been on claim for a long period of time, and they've given a lot of referrals and really made their friends and acquaintances know that it's not about simplicity. Sometimes you just have to go with an expert and work through that way. So I would say that was probably a pivotal moment of the understanding of really understanding disability insurance if you're going to do it.
Well, it's certainly a contract that, definitions, define the benefit and when it's payable. Life insurance is somewhat a little more cut and dried. You are or you aren't. And with a lot of these, I won't call them part-timers, but I guess from a disability knowledge point of view, they are part-timers, but they still have the licenses and they still provide some clutter, some competition. So how do you, aside from just, I mean, what I saw there was someone who cared about the client, regardless of whose name was on the servicing agent of the policy, and you were extremely well paid, both psychically and financially, by just
Yes,
being a
that was.
professional, a caring professional. And so, which raises the question, just generally, when you're getting new clients, how do they come to you? Is it referral? Is it by acquisition? Is it by seminar? How do people find out about Zavitz Insurance?
I think it's all of the above. Everything that you said. Um, you know, I've heard other advisors say the same thing I'm about to say right now. I don't go hunting for clients. That sounds so presumptuous, but I don't. That being said, I make sure that I've got a lot of avenues open so that they walk through the door, and instead of pulling them through the door, I like to entice them to come to the door and walk right in. And so I've made sure that there is a lot of venues that make it that new clients will want to come to me, either through existing clientele or programs that I set up that makes it that they want to come. In the early days, the seminars, I was right into the schools in a big way. And so that opened the door to a lot of new clients. And then I found over the years that being in the schools for me personally wasn't a good place for me to be, that there was better places for me to be. And so I have other advisors that have, carried on that tradition and done what I used to do. But at the same time, the existing clients, I never ask for referrals. I'm terrible at that, but they do provide me with a lot of referrals moving forward. And again, I'm always trying to look for processes that allow the door to be open for others to walk through it.
Interesting. And yet, even with that positive environment and that productive environment, you get no's from time to time. And it's one of the things I think that newer advisors find difficult to deal with. They take no's very personally. How do you deal with your no's when, whether it's an existing client saying, no, that's not for me, or I'm not going to go forward with that coverage, or whether it's a brand new person who says, no, I'm still going to stay with my existing advisor? How do you stay?
I don't think it's any different than when I started in the business. They're tough at any time. And I still wonder, what it is I could have done differently or anything, if I don't get the case that I've been working on. The only ones that really like they bother me, and I always look at it as a learning opportunity. So maybe I'm better the next time, or I could figure out how I could do things a little bit differently. That being said, sometimes just going back to the trough, going back to them every once in a while, sooner or later they might just come along on that. I've had lots of clients where they've actually decided that they're going to do business elsewhere, perhaps even their association, they say, well, I think my association is going to take care of me better, and they'll go to the association, and I've lost the case. But when they go on to the association, when it comes to claim time, or when it comes to a family event that made things very difficult, and they find that there's nobody there to help them, there's no advisor, there's nobody help them with their claim, or even understand their policy, or they're on their 25th different advisor or whatever, and they come back to you, I take them in, even if I have to take agent of record of policies, and I don't get paid for them, as we all know, right? I will take the agent of record so that I've got all of the policies on one roof, and then I can do the job that I have to do as an insurance advisor, because I've always found that the money flows. I don't know how, when, where, or how the money flows, and they turn out to be the best clients. Like, sometimes going through a bad situation, when it turns around, you got a client for life. They're never leaving you.
Yeah.
Right? When sometimes it's too easy to pick somebody up, it might be too easy for them to go too.
There's sort of that crucible of adversity, and you both come out maybe with a little scar tissue, but there's a bond there, and that may and neither of you want to go through that again. You realize the value of the relationship, and you go forward. So from either a business or personal point of view, and there's so many ways to measure this, so this is a wide open one, but how do you measure your success? How do you, whether it's at the end of a year or the end of a month or whatever, how do you say it's been a great year? What do you look for? And what are some key numbers that you might suggest other advisors pay attention to?
Oh, I'm really basic. It's all about production. And I know that's crazy. I just insist that we have an office that answers client needs and so on. I mean, that's just a given in our office, and we don't think anything different on that. But for me, because I am an advisor, I've got a large book of business. I still look to that. I've never changed from that, and it's inherent in me. And you've already alluded to the fact that we have sold to Hub. That's a very recent thing. And that sidetracked me to make the decision to actually go through all of that. It sidetracked me, and it's bothering me a lot. And so I'm always saying, okay, I've got to get back to the job that I love, and that's working with clientele. So it made me realize the other day, that's really what I'm all about. But it's got to be good business. Like, your reputation goes down the toilet real fast, and you can't stay in the business for decades. If you're going to just be out there producing for the sake of producing, it's got to be producing in a way that the client is better off than if you hadn't presented the product or the service. And that's extremely important. I always say, whenever I do, especially a big case, but any case, if I was standing in front, if I was in court in front of a judge, could I explain why I recommended what I recommended, and how the client is benefiting from that recommendation? So, always looking at it with that lens. Production comes, but it's important to me.
That's a fantastic lens. You can just imagine that's sort of the gold standard. And if you can convince anybody that your client is better off, and with conviction, and that's what I've heard throughout this entire conversation, is this conviction of what you're doing. I want to get back to that Hub conversation in a minute, but the other thing or other couple of things sort of on the same side. One is your professional development and how you've gone along and with your designations. And then you turned around, or not turned around, but part of that journey in the academic world was to also give back and get involved with the industry. So let's start first with how you learn, and explore some of the most effective ways that you've learned, either the business or people, or maybe some other pursuits that have helped you with your company, and the other advisors could take advantage of. And then talk a little bit about how you got involved with we used to call them life underwriters associations, but we'll, advocates and the like. So let's start with your learning.
Well, I would say that I've always loved learning, always loved it. And I've always loved online learning. In fact, I refer back to my university days, and I'm glad I got my degree and everything else, but I can't honestly say I loved it, loved university, the in-class environment and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I had a riot. I met my husband there, and we got married right after I graduated, but I mean, had a great time, but I did not love university. But as soon as I started into the business, I'd heard about the CFP, and at that time it was out of the US. And I thought, that is a really interesting designation. And I started to do the CFP program. I loved it. I loved online learning. I loved all parts of it. And the rest is history. I mean, I went through the CFP, and I learned so much, and I realized how much I could apply it to client situations. And then I went on with the CFP. And when I got into the group business, I went to the GBA. I didn't go on to the oh my gosh, can't even think of the designation, but anyway.
CBS or
Yes, that's right. I didn't go on to that because I had that retirement planning already done on the CLU and the CFP and so on. And then I went on to the trust and estate planning. And when it came to the TEP, I was in the business long enough, I could have just grandfathered my hours and everything and written an essay, right? Because they will allow that. But I wanted to learn about trusts. I wanted to learn about estates. So I actually said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to take every course right from the very beginning. And I did that. And just with other things I had to do, it took me 5 years, but I loved every course. And to this day, I'm glad that I did that rather than take an easy way, because I learned so much from that designation. And I keep doing that. I keep still taking courses. I think the most recent is the CEA that came out of Advocates.
Yeah.
So courses were really important. I'd encourage everybody to take the courses because they are good. The giving back is a whole other thing. I don't know. It was always instilled in me to give back. I gave back to my community way before I gave back to the industry. And when I worked a lot with the hospitals and fundraising and that sort of thing. And then I was asked to join the Abacus board, and then became chair of Abacus. I loved it. I loved it. We have so many regulators in Canada. It was unbelievable. And I just thought all I did was go on planes and travel from province to province to talk to regulators and represent the industry. But my involvement there really made me realize the importance that financial advisors have on the need for representation. We don't have it. And the regulators out there are not going to be providing the advisors access to help them regulate our industry, to understand our industry, to know how it should be regulated. They put anybody on there that doesn't even understand our industry and then comes out with archaic rules. We need representation. And, while I was chair, I would get people complaining that, okay, well, I've just given up my Abacus membership because they didn't get my address right, or something to that effect. Or, like I could just go to my MP or my MPP and get things handled. Well, that's rubbish. Unless you've got a strong association, nobody's representing you, and you yourself are not going to change the way an MP or an MPP operates. You need to have strength behind you. And then I was fortunate enough to be invited to KLU, and I've loved being on the committees at KLU. I learned so much from all the other people that are there. So I've always said that being on boards, and I've been on many of them, being on boards and committees and that is like getting your MBA for free. But I've been doing it for 40 years and still don't have an MBA, but maybe
Well,
one day.
I love your comments about the step, because that's how I've chosen to take it. And at this stage of my career, it's the one set of letters, I guess, that I'd like to acquire. And you're right, course by course sounds like drudgery, but you're right, it's a learning opportunity, and there's so many intricate details that helps. But it's one thing too, when our firm got involved in investing, in the IROC world, or what they used to call IROC, there is no association of advisors, and they are literally, in many cases, employees of major financial institutions with no voice whatsoever. And to realize on the life side what we have with Advocates and KALU, I think it's underappreciated for sure, and certainly something that we would want to enhance. So, the industry involvement, and thank you for your industry involvement. And I know, as I did, that as much as you give, you get so much back, just in the relationships and the people you meet, and the work you do in Ottawa and Queens Park. It's remarkable. So certainly, it's not a distraction from your business and your practice. I'm sure you would feel. So, and to expand that, then, in the time that we have left, and as I say, we'll talk about business succession, because that's so important. Just quickly on community involvement and the role of that in your business and personal development, and how is it a nice to do, or is it something that really kind of cements you with your community if you get involved?
Really cements you with the community. You can't go into any volunteer position thinking, okay, this is going to get me business and I'm going to get this and that from that. You never go into it like that. But what you build is relationships. And somewhere, somehow, these relationships, they come to fruition in that you've already established the trust. So lots of business has come my way because of what I've done from community work and so on. And even from the stuff that I've done in the industry. But boy, you go in there because you think you can make a difference, and just let it go. And somewhere along the line, the one person you dealt with is now the CEO of a company that you're trying to get the business out of, and it works. And it's usually better if you're not on that same committee anymore. It usually happens 5, 10, 15 years down the road. So you get the benefit of actually making a difference in your community or in your industry at the same time as you will ultimately grow your business, because people know you care. I've had some great awards given to me because of industry or community involvement that I'm super proud of. Where I didn't think that, like, I just went into it to do it, but boy, you get rewarded in ways you just never think you are going to. So I'd urge anybody, especially if you're starting the business, choose your passion as far as charity goes or industry goes, and give it your all for only the reason of helping the organization, and you will gain from that.
Amazing. London is better off for you being around there, Terry. Thank you for that. And in the time we have left, let's explore business succession, because you build this organization, you have family members in them. There's a lot of advisors right now. That's one of the issues they're wrestling with, is what does this all look like? I mean, perhaps the old retirement model that you go on the front porch at age 65 is becoming archaic, but conversely, if you achieve so many goals by 50 and you want to do something else, then you could move on. But what was your plan, or when did you start to think you needed a plan, and when did it start to come together, and how has it evolved over time?
Yeah, I keep thinking now that we have sold the hub, which was not in the plan anywhere along the way, at all. I think, wow, there's a book in there somewhere about what happens with succession. But Justine, again, has been in the company for 19 years, and she's rock solid, and she's more than capable of running the company if I wasn't there. I had no plans to retire or anything else, but she'd been buying me out. She was actually in her 9th year of a 10-year buyout. So succession was already there. And even if she owned all the shares, well, there was nothing to say that I couldn't stay in the company and still continue to do what I wanted to do. And she was all for that. And then when my youngest guy came in, there's the thought, okay, well, we talked about, well, what are we going to do with him? Shouldn't he get some shares? How should we be doing this? So I guess that it's a constant. You constantly look at it. And for me, I knew that I was going to have succession at some point in time, but it was just that I already had her in the business and she was more than ready to take succession. And I really didn't care that I needed to be president. The only thing I said is, you can't take me president and make me vice president or whatever. You just got to call me founder and you can take over presidency. And I said, you got to keep me on benefits. That was the only two things that I said. So, you know, and even the evolution of the 10 years or the 9 years that we were going through succession, we had 3 iterations about what that looked like. Because I always say that you come to an agreement, you fulfill the agreement, or you walk that road. And if it's not working for you, come back to the table and then you just say it's not working and this is why, and you work it out. You can't go back and say, you know, you're gypping me or you're doing anything. You made the agreement, now live with the agreement, and then come to the table to change the agreement in a collaborative approach. So luckily that happened, and we did it 3 times. And then at the end of the day, when you know, we had been approached by a number of companies about possibly selling, and you know, we did not take any of them seriously, including Hub when they came to the table at one point. But our MGA sold out and to Hub, and just in conversation and seeing what was happening, I looked at it through a whole new lens. So did Justine, and we realized the depth of the organization and just what this company represented. So I'm quite proud to be a Hub International company now. The ability for us to hook on to their expertise, like they've got advisors in really specialized programs that do a great job, but don't have either the living benefits or the individual or the group or anything else that we do, that we can actually work with those advisors to enhance the client experience, the depth of the specialty products that are offered and so on. There was just so much opportunity, and it's tough to get new business. And I thought, wow, you know, this is really great. The second thing, and it was really important to me, we've had team members that have been with us for a long period of time. I've got ones that this is still their first job, and they're so smart and dynamic that they needed opportunity to grow. And I wasn't an organization at 16 people that was going to have a CEO or a COO. That was never going to happen. But yeah, I could see these people had that expertise, and I thought, okay, Hub presents an opportunity for these people to grow way beyond before more than whatever I could do for them. And so therefore, maybe this is something I should consider. And that included Justine, and it included Jarrett too, because I could see that they would be able to do what they do best more. So that became more and more obvious, and that was important to me. Justine has her own reasons for agreeing to the sale, because she had to be very she had to agree to it for sure. And it took her longer to agree to it, because why not? She was 1 year away from being the successor. So lots of things happened through that. And through it too, we had to have family meetings. It was super important to have those family meetings. So I think I lived the FEA course. I really
So
do.
in many ways, at some point, did you build the company, or how did you make it sellable? I mean, when Hub bought you, were they buying in essence a corporate unique ability? Were they buying just a bunch of assets? Were they buying knowledge? They're buying. It sounds like they were buying expertise and living benefits.
Yeah, they
And that
wanted
was
us due to our expertise. They wanted that due to the expertise, but these companies, you know, they're big. They know. I mean, it's all about the performa. You know, it's not about times renewals or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, they bring in forensic accountants, and those guys know your business better than you do by the time you've gone through with them. That's all. They're all spreadsheets. That's how the value is established. And in our situation, we didn't even talk about the value. I mean, at one point, the value was much higher than what we ultimately got, because when we looked at the performa, we went, all right, if we're going to grow, could we grow under this budget? And I went, no, we can't. So I'd rather take less for a company and have it, you know, have the ability for it to do what it needs to do to move forward, and so on. That becomes more important. So it's a whole unique experience. What they're looking at is what you can provide for the whole organization. And what I'm looking at is, okay, are they going to be a good partner? Am I going to be able to like working with them? And then the money part is a whole different world.
Wow. Terry, we're coming to the end of our hour. Thank you so much for your contributions and for, I guess, dropping the kimono. I'm sure that doesn't take that the wrong way, but it's just been remarkable to see such a unique organization and a little insight into both you as a family person, as a business owner, as an advisor, and as a grower. And certainly I speak on behalf of everybody in attendance today that learned an awful lot. And so thank you for your time. Look forward to seeing you at KALU in the future. And at this point, Mr. Geller, we'll hand it over to you.
Well, I should want to say first, Paul, you are an easy interviewer. So thanks for making it so easy, so well prepared.
Well, my pleasure.
Thank you both. That was exceptional. You know, one of the great things about this webinar series, firstly, we had to sit down and think about who we thought were masters of insurance and who we thought were master interviewers, and try to put the two together. And then to realize in the 8th interview that not only are you masters of insurance, but you're people I respect. You're people who do things a way that I respect. And that's important to me. And I think it's something that if others listen to you, they too can learn to be respected professionals in our business. And I thank you for that. Next week, we have another professional, Mr. Dave Patriarch, who's one of the best group people and most knowledgeable group people in the country. And he'll be interviewed by Jim Ruda. So you'll meet our, what will that be, our 5th interviewer.